Hey guys, how's everybody doing? I want to do a quick little tutorial type video today. I was talking to a gentleman the other day and we were discussing kind of a lighting setup that he was doing, a lot like what I've got going behind here, and I've set up a very simple thing to make an illustration. He was photographing people on a white background, wanted to make sure the background goes white, and so I drew up a little diagram and it was brilliant. I mean, it made total sense to me. But later that evening I got to thinking, I might have kind of lost him a little bit in the way that I described it. So I'm going to do a quick little video and I'm going to explain what I was talking about. I don't know if he'll see it, but it's an important thing to know when you're in the studio, when you're working with people or product. It's important to understand how your lights are relating to each other, and I just thought I'd do a little video and make it clear. So here's the situation, and like I said, my setup is super duper simple. I've got a subject on my table, I've got a white seamless in the background, and I want my background to go white. Here's my subject, I've got one little softbox, and I've got a fill card right over here. Let's go to 2/50th of a second just to make this this work. 2/50th of a second at f8, I believe. Let's double check that. 250 f8, flash goes off, and there's my shot. As you can see, the background is not white, it's gray, and that's what we were trying to discuss on how to do that and how to do that right. So here's the diagram that I drew for this gentleman the other day, which I still think was just brilliant. There's my white background. This is if I was looking straight from the sky, looking straight down on my set. There's the background. Here's my subject. I'll just put an S right there for my subject. In this case, it's a camera. I've got a softbox over here. My camera's looking at it like this. And this light is reading f8 to get a good exposure. I've got a fill card over here, but my subject is properly exposed at f8 with this softbox. Now, with no other lights on the set, my white background is going gray because it's not reading f8 as well. Way back here is reading something darker, and I'll show you that here in just a second. But I need this white background to read at least f8. If it reads the same aperture as my main light on my subject, which is the proper exposure at the subject, this should be a proper exposure as well because my camera is set at f8 to get this proper exposure. If it reads f8 in the background, then my white paper should be white. I could actually probably go to about f11 and overexpose it a little bit back here to make sure I completely go white. If I go too much farther than about a stop, I'm going to run the risk of having lens flare, light bouncing off that white paper and back into my lens, creating lens flare or doing something to my subject that I don't want it to do. So about f8 to match my main light, or maybe a little bit more, maybe up to a stop, so that my white background actually goes white. So in order to show you how I got f8, I'm going to put a gray card in here at my subject, show you that at f8 it is a gray card, and I'm going to show you what it's doing in the background without a light back here, and then we're going to light up the background and try to match the exposure so that it looks right. Now, if you're wondering why I'm not talking about shutter speed on my little diagram, shutter speed has nothing to do with flash exposure. Shutter speed is going to control the ambient light, or at least be part of the combination of things that control the ambient light, but the shutter itself does not control the flash exposure. And if you notice here, I've got this window curtain open pretty wide so that you can see me in this video. I'm actually going to shut it so that no ambient light is spilling onto our set. So if it gets a little dark in the video, I apologize for that, but I want to do it for the sense of we're only dealing with the flash exposure. Normally what I would do is I would have a handheld meter, flash meter, that I could hold at my subject to get a meter reading. Long time ago I sold my flash meter. Now that I'm doing this channel and I'm trying to explain some certain things, I wish I had that meter back, but I don't. And most people don't have an incident meter anyway, so I'm going to take a gray card and And I'm going to hold it in my set like this, not towards the light that I get any weird reflections off it. I just want to square it up like this. It's in the same light as my subject, and I'm going to take a photograph. Here's the image of the gray card, and you can see it's properly exposed because I'm doing this straight out of the camera. I'm not doing any manipulations to it whatsoever. You'll see that the gray card is gray. So f8 is the proper exposure from the softbox lighting our subject. Now let me do the same thing. I'll take a photograph with the gray card at the position right up against my background paper, and we'll see what this looks like with only the main light on the subject. No light on the background at this point, just the gray card from back here. Okay, so there's my gray card on the same plane as the background. I'm gonna come around over to here, and you can see it in the shot. I'm actually gonna focus on it. Let's focus on the card, okay? And let's take this shot here. Now I'll show you the shot that I just took at f8, and as you can see, my gray card is no longer middle gray, it's dark gray because it's underexposed. That's why my white paper back there is also not white, it's underexposed. So I'm going to change the aperture, take another photograph until we get the gray card on the background actually gray, and then our white paper should be relatively white, but you'll see how much difference the exposure is from the subject to the background. I'm not sure how well you guys can see this, but here is the image that I had to take. I had to go to f4 and increase the ISO to 320. So from 8 to f4 is 2 stops and an ISO increase of 1 stop. That indicates that the background was 3 stops darker than my foreground. So I told you that I need the background to read f8 or f11. It actually reads right now 3 stops under my main light of f8, which would be, it's actually reading f2.8, 3 stops under where I'm at with the subject. So I've got to put a light on the background that will light up the white area of my background that I can see through the camera and get it 3 stops brighter to come into f8 or even f11, so actually 3 to 4 stops brighter so that my white background ends up being white. Let me show you where I landed, guys. Here's my main light. Half power in my softbox. On my background light, I am also at half power with this one, which ironically, no modifier on the front of this one. Half power on this white background equals out to be half power through a softbox at a much closer distance, I suppose. But that gave me an equal subject exposure and background exposure so that my white background ends up being white. So I hope I clarified that a little bit. I know it's a little awkward without my light meter, and I regret that I sold that. Of all the equipment I've sold over the years, even though I wasn't using it whatsoever and it just sat in my bag taking up space, now that I have this channel, now that I'm trying to show people how I do what I do and why I do what I do, I wish I had that meter back. And one of these days, it's a piece of equipment that I will purchase again, an incident handheld flash meter. Make it a whole lot easier to explain this, but I hope that made sense how I needed to get my apertures from both lights in the foreground and the background to equal each other, or like I said, with a white background you can go a little bit over in order to make my white background white. So I hope that made a little bit of sense. And just to kind of throw this out, just to take it one little step farther, as long as I'm controlling the light on my foreground, my subject area, I can make anything, any tone in the background I want based on how much light I put on it. For instance, I could make that white piece of paper go completely black if I put no light on it whatsoever. It's just going to go too dark and render black in my photograph. I could make a black piece of paper go light gray, if not white, if I put a ton of light on it in relationship to my subject. So you have complete control of the two when you've got different light sources hitting the two. Now, if you have a situation where your main light is completely spilling onto the background, that's a different story. But when you've got them separated and you've got different lights on different parts of your scene, you have control of it and controlling that tone in the background. All right, I'm going to stop talking because I don't want to confuse it anymore. Hopefully that made some sense and answered some questions. And if I ever see that gentleman again, I will point him to this video. You guys have a great week, a great day, and I will see you in the next video.